Imagine yourself on a calm night, boarding an international flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. The airport hums with the quiet efficiency of routine travel, and like any other journey, you check in, stow your luggage, and find your seat. As the engines roar to life and the plane soars into the night sky, there's comfort in the thought that you'll land in a new city come sunrise. The cabin lights dim. Flight attendants make their rounds. You drift into sleep, trusting in practiced procedures and experienced hands at the controls. But then, out of nowhere, the sequence ends. The landing never comes. Such was the fate of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, which vanished from the skies without a trace on March 8, 2014. What began as a routine flight would evolve into one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. 239 souls, families, friends, colleagues, were aboard, expecting a safe arrival in Beijing, their lives stretching out before them. But within hours, hope twisted into horror. The world would awaken to news of disappearance, inconceivable in a time of omnipresent technology and constant connectivity. No distress call was heard. No signal begged for help. Weeks stretched into months, months into years, and still, the mystery only deepened. In the search for MH370, the vastness of the ocean mirrored the uncertainty and pain felt by those left behind, families gripped by not only grief, but a haunting lack of answers. As the world waited and searched, the only certainty was uncertainty itself. Each year since has added to the legend and tragedy of a flight that, against all odds, never returned. March 8, 2014, began as any other day at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Passengers checked their documents, airport staff processed boarding passes, and the crew prepared for the overnight flight to Beijing, a 6-hour journey covering thousands of kilometers. Aboard were 227 passengers, most of them Chinese nationals, along with 12 dedicated crew members. The cockpit was commanded by Captain Zaharieh Ahmad Shah, a 53-year-old veteran pilot, and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, a promising 27-year-old on one of his first flights as co-pilot. The initial stages of MH370's journey seemed completely routine. The Boeing 777 taxied onto the runway and lifted off at 12:41 a.m., climbing into clear skies. As the aircraft travelled northeast, cabin crew attended to the passengers, and the control tower monitored their progress. Everything was calm and uneventful. At 1:19 a.m., as the plane approached the boundary between Malaysian and Vietnamese airspace, Captain Zahari transmitted what should have been a perfunctory farewell. "Good night, Malaysian 370. These were the final words anyone on the ground would ever hear from MH370. Moments later, as the plane crossed into Vietnamese airspace, it inexplicably dropped from civilian radar screens. What followed challenges explanation. Instead of continuing on its planned route, military radar tracked an unexpected maneuver. MH370 turned sharply westward, flying back over the Malay Peninsula and then out into the vast reaches of the Indian Ocean. No distress call was made, no indication given of technical issues, hijacking, or emergency. For more than an hour, the aircraft continued its erratic journey. It passed over islands, turned again southwest, and eventually left the range of land-based radar entirely at 2:22 a.m. Then, nothing. The plane vanished from all screens, ceased communication, and was never seen or heard from again. In just over an hour's time, MH370 shifted from the expected to the unfathomable. A routine flight had become an unsolved riddle, a haunting gap in aviation's detailed record-keeping. From Kuala Lumpur to the South China Sea, to the furthest reaches of the Indian Ocean, the world looked skyward and found only silence. As the sun rose on March 8th, and word spread of a missing aircraft, global shock gave way to urgency. Governments, Militaries and aviation experts launched immediate search operations, initially focusing on the South China Sea, where flight controllers first lost contact. Malaysia led the effort, joined quickly by Vietnam, whose airspace the plane never entered, as well as China and Singapore. Ships and aircraft scoured the waters, searching for wreckage, signals, or even survivors. The realization grew quickly, however, that MH370's final trajectory was not where anyone had expected. As data from military radar and other sources was analyzed, the search expanded, first westwards to the Strait of Malacca, then even further afield. The possibility that the plane had flown for hours after losing radio contact sent shockwaves through the global aviation community. The search area multiplied. First 1,000 square kilometers, then tens of thousands. In total, 26 countries joined forces, pooling satellite data, naval fleets, and air surveillance resources. The United States and Australia provided advanced aircraft and satellite technology. China dispatched ships and search planes. The lines on global maps kept shifting as new, often conflicting data emerged. The mystery deepened on March 15th, when British satellite company Inmarsat supplied a shocking clue. Unseen by most, MH370's satellite communication system had attempted hourly handshakes with a geostationary satellite long after contact had been lost. These automated signals suggested the plane had kept flying for up to 7 hours after its initial disappearance. By analyzing the timing and frequency of these pings, investigators identified 2 potential arcs where the aircraft could have run out of fuel: the northern corridor, stretching toward Kazakhstan, and the southern arc, deep into the unforgiving Indian Ocean. With no evidence to support a northerly flight path, attention soon centered on the remote waters southwest of Australia. It was here, hundreds and later thousands of kilometers from the initial search area, that hope for answers flickered and then faded. Australia took the lead in the most complex, challenging underwater search in history. Deep-sea robots, sonar mapping, and complex drift analysis combed an ocean floor never before mapped in such detail. Yet days, weeks, and months slipped away with no trace of wreckage, flight recorders, or answers. The story of MH370 became one of hope mingled with heartbreak. Families clung to the possibility of survival, or at least an explanation, as experts and volunteers searched relentlessly. Each new theory gave rise to another round of headlines, but none brought the closure so desperately needed by those left behind. With the world watching and families holding vigil, Malaysia's Prime Minister stepped forward on March 24, 2014, to deliver the news that would echo in the hearts of millions, a somber declaration that MH370 was presumed lost, with all lives aboard. Drawing on the satellite handshakes and the plane's last known movements, officials concluded that the aircraft had ended its journey in the southern Indian Ocean, far from any land or hope of rescue. The announcement, intended to provide some finality, instead sparked outrage and disbelief. For many families, particularly in China, the closure seemed manufactured and without physical proof. They demanded evidence: a cited crash site, recovered black boxes, some confirmation that would justify the pronouncement of loss. Up to that point, not even the smallest fragment of MH370 had been found. It wasn't until July 2015, more than a year after the disappearance, that a breakthrough arrived. A piece of wreckage, a wing flaperon, washed up on the shore of Réunion Island in the western Indian Ocean, thousands of kilometers from the search zone. Forensic analysis confirmed what many already feared. It belonged to MH370. Over the following years, additional debris would appear along the coasts of Africa and islands blessed only by winds and tides, not by answers. Each fragment filled in only the faintest sketch of what had transpired, offering more heartbreak than clarity. Though many were forced to accept that their loved ones would not return, the announcement that all lives were lost somewhere in that vast expanse of ocean carried neither peace nor answers. The physical evidence, as precious as it was rare, stubbornly refused to reveal why the world's most advanced passenger plane had disappeared so completely. Beyond the technical efforts and diplomatic cooperation, the disappearance of MH370 became a human tragedy on an immense scale. The families waited, first in airports, clutching photos and hope, then in hotel conference rooms, crowded around officials announcing every new development. Grief mixed with frustration at the slow trickle of news and the apparent lack of progress. For many, the loss was compounded by a sense of exclusion, kept out of the loop by opaque official statements and shifting search zones. The international search, unprecedented in scope and technology, came to an agonizing standstill in January 2017. Authorities announced that, with no further credible evidence, the official search would be suspended. Hopes for closure now rested on the unpredictable appearance of additional debris or independent searches, dreams haunted by the shifting currents and relentless tides of the Indian Ocean. The fate of MH370 ignited a storm of speculation and theory across the globe. Aviation experts pored over radar plots, cockpit schedules, and communication logs. Some suspected catastrophic mechanical failure, perhaps a sudden fire or decompression event that incapacitated crew and passengers alike. Others hinted at deliberate intervention, perhaps hijacking, sabotage, or an act by someone within the cockpit. The truth for now remains elusive. As the years pass, the legacy of MH370 endures, not only as a technical riddle, but as an enduring testament to uncertainty, resilience, and the need for answers. Every so often the world remembers. The families, the investigators, the plane itself, and that silent span of sea. The greatest mystery in modern aviation remains unsolved, a reminder that even in an age of satellites and instant communication, some secrets can vanish into the night, leaving only questions and a search for the closure that has so far proved impossible to find.